Several years ago, I began pulling together the family histories uh, around the first converts in my ancestry, starting with Alpheus Gifford and Enos Curtis and all the rest of them. I had it in chronological order based upon who I could tell was baptized first. And I began collecting more and more family histories. It all started really on a trip to Nauvoo many years ago before the internet, and we had the opportunity to work through the library there and make photocopies of family histories that I didn't have. And I consolidated them and began collecting more. And of course, when the internet came along and then eventually Family Search and the ability to keep memories and share memories, it's just been a glorious development. I've just continued to enhance it. When Elder Ballard invited us to do more online, I put a whole lot of material on a Google blog, and it's still there, hanging out there somewhere in cyberspace. A few people have commented on it, but I haven't done anything with it for years. Once Family Search got as good as it got and has become and is continuing to improve, I've really focused around Family Search as the main tool. I use Ancestry.com, particularly for research and working with other trees. People like to use Ancestry because they can control their tree, and nobody else in their family can mess it up, and that's a real advantage of Ancestry.com. In contrast, Family Search has the very audacious goal of getting one great family all pulled together, and that obviously requires huge amounts of conflict resolution, lots of collaboration, people working together as cousins and resolving disputes, resolving conflicting sources. Obviously, in most cases, just coming up with sources, trying to find information that is missing in many cases. So we have lots of end of lines, lots of records that we don't have, and yet there's still a lot that we do have that we need to organize better and resolve conflicts and work with the duplicates. And there's just a lot yet to do. And it's having Family Search as the tool that it is while daunting and challenging for us all, particularly on an emotional level, working with what we think is right versus what other people think is right, is really a challenge. But it's a challenge that we've got to face, and ultimately it will be what happens when we finally get the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so to speak. In the meantime, these two tools, Ancestry and Family Search, are just fabulous. Along with all the others, there's lots of affiliated resources that are approached that we can access through Family Search. That's why I use Family Search as the primary tool. But then all these other collections of stories for purposes of readability and search and visibility, it's helped me to use this approach of offline editing and review. I use Word documents. I've done things on Google Docs, but I find it a little too limiting, so I prefer backing things up and keeping the ability to sort and search and a few other things. I this year broke into first I separated my parents, and then I fairly quickly after that separated my grandparents, and so I now have four smaller documents. The other one just got to be too unwieldy, so I've broken it up into the ancestry of my father's father, my father's mother, my mother's father, and my mother's mother. And within those documents lies what I had previously in the earlier, bigger document, and I'm using it now, from now on, the smaller document that revolves around my individual grandparent, to continue to add stories and photos and whatever comes along. I use this very extensively as a companion to family search work, because I can reference things in family history or family search onto my document, and back and forth. I can tell stories. I can kind of get to know people where we don't have any stories on them by just examining with greater care their background, their geography, the time, the history, whatever I can learn, and where they moved as a multi-generational family, and all the rest, and kind of put together a story. I really developed this with the Arbin family after I found a Facebook page I was invited to participate in from Australia, Australian cousins who set up a Facebook page for James Arbin and his wife Elizabeth and their ancestors, some of whom came to the United States and Utah and Idaho, and I came through that line, and others went to Michigan, others went to New Zealand, others went to Australia, and many stayed in England. And so all those families have expanded and gone all around the world, and we're now trying to work with that big family and enhance the story of the family as it branches along through the generations. That's been a kind of a prototype, and I'm trying to do similar things with the other families. It's a lot of work. I do a little here, a little there. It's never possible to do as much as I want on any given time, but I do what I can. Ultimately trying to capture as much as we can on the 17 families. I used to think of it in terms of 14, but I really ought to allow it to be 17 families, even though some of them are pretty small families compared to others, because they're more recent. Back when I began using 1820 as a historical point of reference, the beginning of the dispensation of the fullness of times, I've let that be kind of a place where I can do a little bit more historical framing and try to picture each family as it was, where it was in the spring of 1820 or thereabouts. And that's been kind of fun. It's allowed me to imagine them in the different parts of the world where they lived, doing all the different things they did, but at the same general time in history. And when you do it that way, then the family's bigger because, well, it isn't just the individual who may have entered the scene, in 1850 or 70 or something.